The headlines scream that war between Washington and Tehran is imminent or just around the corner. The reality is far less dramatic but strategically deeper than you might expect. You are about to understand why both sides actively maintain a state of controlled conflict rather than rushing toward total war or a peace deal. This dynamic preserves regime survival for leaders in both capitals, making escalation unlikely despite what your newsfeed suggests today. To grasp this situation, we must first discard the binary thinking that dominates public discourse. Most observers assume states operate on a simple spectrum where they are either at peace or engaged in open warfare. In international relations theory, this is known as the security dilemma, but it fails to capture the nuance of modern proxy conflicts and nuclear deterrence. The United States and Iran have developed a complex equilibrium that exists precisely between these two extremes. Neither side wants a direct military confrontation because the costs would be catastrophic for both regimes, yet neither can afford total withdrawal from their current strategic posture without risking internal collapse. Consider how regime survival functions as the primary driver here. For the leadership in Tehran, maintaining a stance of resistance against American power is essential to legitimizing their rule domestically. A sudden peace deal or complete de-escalation could be interpreted by hardline factions and the public as weakness, potentially triggering unrest that threatens the government's stability. Conversely, for Washington, appearing too soft on Iran risks political backlash at home, especially from allies in the region who demand a firm stance against Tehran's regional activities. This creates a situation where both governments have strong incentives to keep tensions elevated but manageable. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. The concept of controlled conflict explains why we see constant flare-ups without a full-scale war breaking out. When violence escalates, it is rarely an accident or a miscalculation by rogue actors alone. Instead, these incidents often serve as signals between the two capitals. They communicate red lines and demonstrate resolve to domestic audiences while simultaneously allowing room for de-escalation before things get out of hand. This pattern has repeated itself over decades, from nuclear negotiations in Vienna to strikes on oil tankers or drone attacks near Kuwait Bay. Each incident follows a similar rhythm. Tension rises, rhetoric intensifies, then back-channel communications open up, and finally, the situation stabilizes at a new baseline without crossing into total war. Now consider how this dynamic interacts with public sentiment and information warfare. Recent academic analysis using federated transformer models to study online discourse reveals that negative reactions to geopolitical tensions are volatile, but do not necessarily translate into state-level strategic intent. A 2026 sentiment study on the Iran-Israel-USA conflict showed significant polarization in social media reactions, yet this volatility often reflects public outrage rather than a shift in diplomatic strategy. The data indicates that while online discourse becomes extremely negative during crises, these spikes do not correlate with an actual increase in the probability of war or breakthrough negotiations from the perspective of state actors. This disconnect between digital noise and strategic reality is crucial for understanding the current moment. Social media platforms amplify emotional responses because they reward engagement through algorithms designed to maximize time spent on site. When a drone strike occurs, online narratives immediately polarize into pro-war or anti-war camps within hours. However, policy analysts know that diplomatic channels operate in silence far from these digital battlegrounds. The decisions made by the United States and Iran regarding their strategic posture are not driven by trending hashtags, but by hard calculations of military capability, economic constraints, and internal political stability. The most valuable insight here is recognizing that this controlled conflict state is actually a rational strategy for both sides to achieve their core objectives without paying the price of total war. By maintaining ambiguity about their true bottom lines, leaders in Washington and Tehran can claim victories at home while avoiding disastrous outcomes abroad. This approach allows them to manage regional rivals like Israel or Saudi Arabia by projecting strength through proxy groups rather than direct engagement. It also preserves flexibility for future negotiations when political conditions might shift favorably. We must look closer at the constraints that bind both nations together in this uneasy dance. Economic pressure from sanctions has weakened Iran's economy, making a full-scale war economically ruinous for Tehran. At the same time, the United States faces domestic fatigue regarding Middle East interventions and prefers to focus resources on strategic competition with other global powers like China or Russia. These mutual constraints create a strong incentive to avoid escalation even when political rhetoric suggests otherwise. The result is a stable but dangerous equilibrium where both sides can claim they are standing firm without actually crossing into open warfare. This framework helps explain why headlines often mislead us about the true state of affairs. When you see reports of increased military activity or harsh diplomatic statements, remember that these actions often serve to reinforce the controlled conflict status quo rather than signal an imminent shift toward war or peace. The actors involved are playing a long game where survival and regime stability matter far more than immediate tactical victories in any single confrontation. Understanding this pattern allows you to look beyond the daily noise and see the enduring strategic logic driving U.S.-Iran relations today. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.